We're back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling a pretty heavy topic, but one we just can't avoid, the dragon ascendancy.
Yeah.
It's our reality now, and you need to understand how we got here.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a document from 2048 that well, just lays it all out,
Yeah.
The years leading up to it, the return itself,
Oh,
the war, and how we wound up living under their rule.
and it's hard to go back to that time. I mean,
Yeah.
for a lot of us listening, we lived through it. We saw it all happen. And revisiting those events, well, it can bring up some pretty painful memories.
Right, trauma, loss, it's all there. But this document, it gives us context,
Mhm.
It helps us make sense of it all. The mistakes we made, the sheer scale of it. I mean, we were up against a force unlike anything humanity had ever seen before.
And for those of you listening who were born after, well, after the change, this is your history. It's crucial to understand what happened, how the world you know came to be.
It all started with a decade of quiet. After those first few sightings, back in the early 2030s, there were these scattered reports, these glimpses, but nothing concrete.
A whole decade, 10 years of wondering, were they gone, extinct,
Uh-huh.
or just hiding,
Yep.
waiting? And, looking back, you can see how that uncertainty, that doubt, it played right into their claws.
It's true. The document talks about how we kind of lulled ourselves into this false sense of security. Scientific funding dried up, monitoring stations were shut down, even the military. They scaled back their investigations, classified it all.
We just wanted to believe it wasn't real, didn't we?
Yeah.
That this threat, this impossible threat, had just vanished is a dangerous thing, hope, when it blinds you to the truth.
Right. There was this debate going on at the time, extinction versus hiding. And, part of us, I think, wanted to believe they were gone, extinct. It was easier that way, more comfortable.
But there were those who knew better, those who'd seen enough to know that the dragons were real, that they were powerful, and that they weren't just going to disappear.
They tried to warn us, but no one was really listening. The military, they had some early tracking data, but it got buried in reports, classified, forgotten.
It's so frustrating, isn't it, to think. If we just paid attention, taken those warnings seriously, maybe things could have been different.
Maybe, but we'll never know. What we do know is that on March 7th, 2038, that uneasy silence, it ended in a way none of us could have imagined.
March 7th. It started with these massive heat signatures detected by satellites all over the world. Anomalies, they called them. These huge spikes in thermal energy.
And then the reports started coming in from all corners of the globe. Eyewitness accounts, climbers, geologists, people in these remote, wild places. They saw it firsthand. The dragons rising from the ice, the mountains.
Can you imagine that, seeing those creatures emerge? Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. From these places we thought were uninhabitable. The document specifically mentions the Tian Shan Mountains, the Andes, the Rockies, the Alps. This wasn't a local event, it was global.
It was coordinated, like they were all waiting for some signal, and then boom, they were back. And not just back, they were bigger, stronger. There were more of them than ever before. It was like they'd been growing, evolving, down there in the dark.
That brief moment of awe,
Yeah.
that some people felt. Seeing these magnificent creatures in the sky again, it was quickly replaced by terror as the attacks began.
It started with Karakol, this city, in Kyrgyzstan. 60,000 people, gone, overnight, wiped out. The document describes it as just savage, brutal. It was our first real taste of what we were up against.
And it didn't stop there. The Chilean mining colony, that Alaskan oil facility, abandoned villages in the Pyrenees, all targeted, all strategically important in some way. This wasn't random. It was a calculated assault on humanity.
And our response. It was pathetic, disorganized. The governments of the world, they were in denial. They couldn't believe it was happening. They wasted precious time arguing, debating, while the dragons were out there winning.
The document actually mentions that there were some internal reports early on that got things right, that accurately assessed the threat. But those reports were ignored, buried. Why? Was it just disbelief? Or was there something more going on, something that prevented us from taking action?
Hard to say.
Okay.
The fact is, we didn't act. And the dragons, they took full advantage. They went after our infrastructure, our supply lines, our power grids, transportation networks. They crippled us systematically.
And our weapons, our technology, all that firepower, it was useless. Fighter jets outmaneuvered, heat-seeking missiles failing to lock on. The document talks about how they could regulate their body heat somehow, making our targeting systems useless. We threw everything we had at them, and it just bounced off.
There was this idea going around at the time that the dragons, that they were creatures of the wilderness, that they wouldn't attack major cities, that they'd avoid large populations. It was a comforting thought, but it was wrong, dead wrong.
The fall of London, September 5th, 2039. It was a turning point, a nightmare. The document describes it as biblical horror, and that's the only way to describe it.
Yes.
Dozens of dragons descending on the city. Fire, destruction, chaos.
They overwhelmed us completely. The evacuation efforts, they were a joke. Too little, too late. London, Paris, Tokyo, New York, one by one, they fell. By 2041, the world we knew, it was gone, just smoldering ruins.
But they didn't wipe us out. Not completely. Instead, they imposed their rule, their order. We became servants, farmers, laborers, working for our new masters, trading resources for protection.
The world fractured into these enclaves, these little pockets of humanity, scattered, isolated, each one ruled by a dragon, or a group of dragons. The draconic sovereignty is what they call it.
And it's not a uniform rule either. The document describes how some dragons, they demand tribute. Grain, metal, other things, others, they just rule through fear, unpredictable, violent.
Yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to it. No communication, no understanding. They're alien in every sense of the word.
But even then, we tried to fight back. Operation Stormclaw, 2045, a desperate attempt to use repurposed technology. Railguns, modified weaponry. We thought we had a chance.
We were wrong. It was a massacre. The dragons, they crushed us utterly and decisively. It was the end of any organized resistance.
And that's where this document leaves us. 2048, humanity, an occupied species, living under the shadow of the dragons. The future, uncertain. Are they content with their rule, or are they planning something more? We don't know.
It's a question that haunts us every day. What's next? What are their plans for us? It's a heavy weight to carry, this uncertainty, this fear.
But the document, it also talks about our resilience, our strength, even in the face of this overwhelming power. We haven't given up. Scholars, they still record our history, our stories. Artists, they find ways to express themselves, to resist, to keep the flame of creativity alive.
It's true. And the children, even those born under the rule of the dragons, they carry these fragments, these memories of a time before, a time when the skies were free, when humanity ruled itself.
And that's what we need to hold on to, that hope, that spirit, that refusal to be broken. It's what has kept us going all these years, and it's what will continue to keep us going, no matter what the future holds.
This document, it's a reminder of what we lost, of the mistakes we made, but it's also a testament to our strength, to our will to survive. We have to learn from the past and never forget it.
So, to all of you listening, out there, in the shadows, remember who you are, remember where you came from, and never give up hope. We may live under the rule of dragons, but we are still human, and we will endure.
This deep dive has been difficult, but it's been necessary. We need to confront the past in order to face the future and understand our place in this new world.
Thank you for joining us.